Thank you, Amy. Thank you very much. Okay, good morning, members. Can I welcome you all to the Standards Committee meeting today? The meeting is being live streamed, as you will have just heard Amy mentioned, and will be recorded for archive purposes. Obviously, when we get to part 2, the live stream will be stopped, but the meeting will continue with the members present. Can I just mention, first of all, please, would all present mute their microphones until they're called by the chairman to speak? The reason we do that is because there are some feedback issues sometimes. So to resolve that, we ask all present to mute their microphones until they're called by the chairman to speak. All members of committee, happy for you to remain on screen, please, if you want to. You don't have to at this stage. That doesn't actually come into the regulations until May 2022. But if you want to remain on screen, that's fine. If you do have camera issues, I would suggest, sometimes there are connection issues, that knock your camera off and then you can still carry on, but obviously you won't be seen on screen. With regard to the chat facility, we would be grateful if you would limit use of the chat facility, because the members of the public are unable to see the chat. So we would be pleased if all comments are made on screen. Should you wish to make a comment, please use the chat, the hand raise function.
I just thought I'd catch up on yesterday.
Something was interrupting us then. Please use the raise your hand function on the Teams facility if you want to make a comment, and the chairman will obviously call you in. If your hand raise facility function isn't working but your camera is on, just simply raise your hand. That would be lovely. And then lastly, if you have any technical difficulties, if you can contact myself outside of the meeting, that would be great. Or if you have to do it inside the meeting because you've got problems, obviously come on screen and let us know. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everybody. I've now got you on screen. Councillor Gray, where are you for this meeting? You've got a very interesting background. Are you on my screen? Is Councillor Gray there?
What you're looking at is the entrance to one of the parks in Penarth, and it's a sculpture, a copper sculpture that represents different buildings in Penarth.
Oh, there he is. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah, good. I thought you were in Portmeirion or somewhere like that, or Italy. Anyway.
No, right. Far more glamorous in Penarth.
Penarth, exactly. Yes. Okay. Apologies for absence. Oh, can I say that you're probably aware that Debbie's not with us today. We've got Vicky who is standing in as Deputy Monitoring Officer. Have we got any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, Mr. Alexander.
Right, that's noted. The minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of May, I've read those through. They seem to me to be an accurate account of what happened. I suppose, does anybody object to that? Or any comments? No? You're all agree, so we can agree that they are a true record of that meeting. Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest? No hands going up. No, nobody wants to say anything. Okay. Right. Well, we then move through to the item 4 on the agenda, which is the applications for dispensation. There were none with the agenda. Have there been any late applications, Victoria, Vicky?
Apologies, I've got two mouses on the go because I've got two devices. No, there aren't any, Chair.
Right. Okay. So we can move on from there. So there's nothing for us to consider there. The next item is observations at the Town and Community Council committee meetings. This is where some of the independent members have been. Karen, can you take us on to this item? Can you take us through this item, please?
Yes, of course I will, Chair. Yes, thank you very much. This is the normal update from members who have visited Town and Community Council meetings, as you quite rightly mentioned, Chair. I understand there are a couple that have been undertaken. One of the members, Mr. Alexander, I also understand undertook one in June, but my understanding is Mrs. Hallett and Mr. Watkins. If that is correct, if they would like to come forward, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes. Mrs. Hallett, would you like to give us an account of your visit? You're mute. You're mute.
Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
I hadn't actually done one. I intended to do one, but it was actually being held live, and I wasn't feeling terribly comfortable about it, so I actually withdrew from that. So I wonder if there's going to be a common approach to this, whether people are happy to go along and attend live hearings, or whether Karen, can you help on this?
Yes, Chair. I think that's for the independent member to determine themselves whether they wish to go or not. What I would say, if any member doesn't wish to go, then obviously they let us know, and that's fine, because obviously with the COVID restrictions, I understand they're not lifted until August, so I do understand members' feelings on this. You know, I've got no issues with it. We can also double check with the Town and Community Councils. They've undertaken a risk assessment, you know, so I can give you that information as well if needed. They should also. Sorry, Chair.
Can I interrupt? There won't be any meetings in August. What is the view of the Vale Council? Are they going to have their meetings in public, or are they still going to be Zoom?
That's not been determined at this stage,
right.
Chair. We've the current position is all meetings are to be undertaken on a hybrid solution. Or virtually. Virtually at the moment, they are being undertaken. Hybrid will kick in as soon as the council makes a decision on that. But currently it's virtual basis.
Okay.
It could change from the decisions that are made in August, but right. the current thinking is not until the autumn, but right. that it's not in tablets of stone, because that could change. You know, the leader and the council could decide to go for hybrid from September. We've got a hybrid solution. It's a matter for the council to make that determination.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Councillor Robertson, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to make the comment that this has cropped up at Venice Parish Community Council, and on the basis of various problems with accessibility to the public, it's been decided that we'll carry on doing virtual meetings until we have a hybrid solution. So I'm not quite sure how Patricia's Community Council actually got around that, but that's been a problem for Dennis Paris, and doesn't seem to have been resolved yet.
Mrs. Harris?
Yeah, just to say that they did send me a risk assessment. I must be honest, I didn't feel terribly comfortable with going along. So I spoke to Paula. Paula conveyed that information. So I thought perhaps we would discuss it at this meeting to see if we would have a common approach, or is it based on every individual member making their own decision? But it's nice to know from Councillor Robertson that you are still saying virtual, you are still using the virtual system, and that we know that is the case.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Tinsley, yes, you've had your hand up. Thanks.
Thank you. I had the same situation with St Athan Council. It was particularly concerning because I was informed that there was going to be a great deal of public interest. And when I read through the agenda, although it did say on the agenda it was going to be limited to 15 members of the public attending the meeting, I still felt uncomfortable. I felt even more uncomfortable when then I was told, well, actually, if you don't attend, your visibility will be limited. So I really felt I was being pushed into attending. As it happened, I said I wasn't going to attend. I was going to join via Teams. And when I logged on, I couldn't get access. And half an hour into the meeting, apparently, when I gave up, I was then informed the next morning that the login had changed. So it was a complete pickle as it happened. So I personally won't be attending any meetings until I'm satisfied that it's safe to do so.
Okay, Well, I think we'll have a look. I think we're going to. I think we've got 6 more councils that we want to go and visit, in inverted commas, between September and December. So I think, Karen, we'll review the position at that stage, and perhaps you can give us an update on what the various councillors have decided and what's available. But certainly, if any of us don't want to attend in person, that's perfectly all right and understandable. So, Mr. Watkins, it looks as if you're the only one who's attended. So can we have a report from you, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, now, yes.
Right. I attended the Iweni Council on the 9th of June, evening meeting, 7 o'clock start, finished at 8:25. Remote meeting, I was admitted to the meeting promptly. I was welcomed and introduced. The members introduced themselves. I could hear everything. I could see everything. I'd received a copy of the agenda beforehand. The tone of the meeting was light and friendly. Chairman clearly had control of the meeting, and the members were contributing fully. There was just one very small point picked up. There was an item on the agenda which, rather mysteriously, LGA 1972, section 137. Now I took that to be a reference to a statute. I wondered what general lay people would make of it. I undertook extensive legal research, but it didn't help me work out what the item was beforehand. If it had simply said grass cutting, it would have meant more to me, and I suspect to people attending the meeting. But it was a very well conducted meeting, a very purposeful meeting.
Thank you very much. Well, I think that's a useful tip, frankly. You know, the meetings, lay people have got to know what it's about. So I think that's a very good point that we will take on board. Karen, I think I was right when I said that we've got 6 more meetings to attend before December. Is that right?
Chair, yes. What I was about to say is we have got 6 more town and community councils to visit. I haven't mentioned to members yet, but my thinking was to do them before December 21, so that we could get them all completed. Because as you were aware, at the last meeting of the committee, Mrs. Tinsley mentioned that could we have a report giving like an overview to a future meeting of the committee, an overview of what's happened to date and some benchmarking. So I think it would be good if we could actually complete all the 26 to give us all that, gather that information. I have got 6 that I'm aware of, and as Councillor Robertson indicated, some of them are actually continuing on virtual meetings. So it looks like out of the 4 I've got here, they will be virtual meetings. So with your permission, I'll send an email around to all the members of the committee, and I can then give them all the dates that I've got here, and then they can have a choose then, and come back to me then after the August recess of which ones they'd like to do, if any, and yeah, we'll go from there, and then obviously we'll bring a report later then, you know, to a future meeting regarding the comments that Mrs. Tinsley made at the last meeting. We've started preparation. There's a document that we've put in together, but I just thought it would be useful to have had at least all the ones that were planned, you know, in that document, so we got more complete information.
Okay, so, can I suggest that you send that at the end of August? So, you know, if you sent it now, it's a bit too far in advance. And then we can spread them around. I haven't done one recently, so I'm quite happy to do 2. But if we do September, October, November, and then, yes, if we've got a meeting in December, haven't we? I was just thinking that if I haven't got a note of it, but if we could finish these by, say, the 30th of November, would that help then? It would give you time to prepare a report? Yeah, by all means, yeah. So during September, October, November, we'll visit those extra meetings. Okay.
Chair,
Good.
can I just mention that I do have Mr. Alexander's comments. He attended Peterson Super Early, and in the main, the comments are fine. There's no issues. He was on a Zoom meeting, and he's got no comments other than the meeting was fine.
Good. Okay. Well, that's good. Okay. Now we move on to item 6, which is progress update following the presentation of a report to the Community Liaison Committee. Karen, I think this falls to you again, if you were able to deal with this, please.
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. Again, following discussion at the last meeting, it was prior to the last meeting, sorry, it was suggested that a report be presented to the Community Liaison Committee. For members' information, the Community Liaison Committee is made up of elected members from the Vale of Glamorgan, and 26 representatives are invited to attend to discuss matters of mutual concern. And it was suggested at the last meeting, I correct myself again, it was the last meeting, where we agreed that a report would be presented to that committee, which discussed the observations that are undertaken by members and given them an overview of what the independent members have found, and also to give an overview of the meetings with the monitoring officer and clerks, so that all the Community Liaison Committee members, representatives from the TCCs, are apprised really of the work that's been undertaken. And the report that went to Community Liaison that evening, I was actually there and presented it, was received very well. They've also asked, Community Liaison have asked for a further report to come back on an annual basis, but bearing in mind, obviously, we've got local government elections next year. They have agreed that comes, to a future meeting after the local government elections next year. So we could take some of our work that we'll be doing for the report for standards and include it in that as well, so we can give a complete overview. And it's all about raising standards and improvements and sharing good practice. Good. I don't think there's any more I need to say about that report, but obviously, if I know some of the members of this committee were actually at the Community Liaison Committee meeting, and I'm sure they would agree with me that it was received well, and the committee were keen to receive future updates.
Thank you very much. I was going to ask if anybody has a comment. Mr. Cuddy, Councillor Cuddy, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I have put my hand up, indeed. I'll take it down again now. He says I'm the representative appointed by the Community Liaison Committee to be the intermediary, in particular with the Public Service Board, and pass messages between them and try to engender cooperation. In the context of that, I'm happy to say that there is growing interactions between the Community Council and the Public Service Boards. I agree with Karen that in respect of the standards issue, there were no issues in the sense, and paradoxically, in the sense that given that what Part 2 matter we have today, most things seem to be pretty well handled by the town and community councils around the Vale, who are anxious to cooperate in many ways with the Public Service Board and with the Vale. I suppose the only thing that hasn't really arisen in any of our agendas is the charter. I think that seems to have gone off the agenda, Karen. The charter which governs the relationship between the Vale and the community councils.
The charter is still in existence. It's just that we do have to finalise the action plan. Working it within the action plan, and that will be progressed. Obviously, with COVID and everything else that's been going on, it has taken the timescale and deadline has obviously been overstretched. But it is something that's still on the radar. But the charter is in existence, and it is being worked with, and we are as supportive as we can be to town and community councils, within democratic services and the council, and we provide significant amount of information. And obviously the clerks meetings and the Community Liaison Committee is an advocate to support that good practice sharing and information sharing between us all. So
I suppose I just wonder when there will be another meeting to finalise the actions there, because I mean issues of standards do come up in the sense there are interactions between the Vale and the councils which are not always entirely sort of running smoothly.
No, I take note, Councillor Cuddy, and obviously it is on my radar to pursue. So as soon as I can, we will, we'll forward that agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you. Subject to anybody else wanting to mention anything, perhaps we'll move on then to 7, which is the Ethical Standards Framework review. Vicky, I think, can lead this because I think she's attended 2 meetings. So perhaps you'd just give a brief explanation of what's been going on.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So in March of this year, just to give you a brief background, the Partnership Council for Wales met, and following a recommendation by the then Minister of Housing and Local Government, it was agreed that there should be an independent review of the ethical standards framework in Wales. The framework was first introduced 20 years ago in 2000. The regulations which underpin it were updated in 2016, and prior to that, the Model Code of Conduct for members of county councils and community councils and other authorities was introduced in 2001 and then recast then in 2008. There were further amendments to that then in 2016. So the independent review has been undertaken by Richard Penn. He has a long history in local government and has an extensive and impressive background. He was chief executive of a council in England, so he's been tasked to undertake the review. The review is being undertaken in 2 phases. The first phase, which we're getting close to the end of, saw Richard Penn engage with partners, and the outcome of that phase, the intention was to build a roadmap to retain those elements of the framework that work well in Wales, and to address some of the areas that partners felt needed updating and amending. The report from Richard Penn was due to be completed at the end of June, but we're not likely to hear very much in relation to that until the autumn, because that report was due to be presented to Welsh Government and the current Minister for consideration. Phase 2 builds on the work undertaken, the engagement work undertaken in Phase 1, and we'll see Richard Penn work with partners and stakeholders on a collaborative basis to deliver the changes identified and are as required from Phase 1. So that's essentially what the review is about. I don't think there's very much more to say about it, and it was simply to put this on the agenda and to make members of the committee aware that it is a review that's ongoing, and further updates will be brought to subsequent standard committee meetings in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, I attended the second meeting. I was impressed with Richard Penn. I felt he knew what he was looking at. He was well aware of it. I mean, his general attitude was that Wales were doing better than England at the moment, and we're ahead. And whilst we're doing well, we could still improve. I think he was impressed with our visits to improve standards, and I thought it was a very positive meeting. So it'll be interesting to see the report. As Vicky said, it was due at the end of June, but we won't see it probably till, or it won't be in the public domain until October.
And if I can add, Chair, that the engagement has been meaningful. I first met Richard Penn at an All Wales Monitoring Officer group meeting earlier this summer, and as you indicated, Chair, we had a meeting because as part of that, part of the review, Richard Penn was keen to meet with chairs of standards committees, and primarily he's interested in what standards committees believe are the strengths and weaknesses of the current framework, how those how some of those areas could be improved upon, and not to forget the implementation in January this year and throughout 2021 into May 2022 of the Local Government and Election Wales Act, and the provisions that relate to the Model Code of Conduct, in particular, members' addresses, and the proposal that the Register of Interests is incorporated as part of Model Code of Conduct. So he welcomed that meeting. I know that. So yes, it's a very much watch this space, and we'll update the committee further when we have a summary of the report.
Are there any comments? Anybody want to make a comment? Mr. Cuddy, your hand's up, and I think you're afterwards, Mrs. Hallett. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, Richard Penn has also been on the remuneration.
Yeah.
As well as one of his many sort of appointments. So he is to some extent familiar with the issues of town and community council in relation to some of those matters. I just noticed in the report that we had suggested that suspensions was a welcome or maybe a necessary tool in our position, in our sort of monitor our exercise of standards, really. I know in England there's an issue because the parish councils have no recourse to an ombudsman. They're stuck with the monitoring officer, if I may use that term, as the arbiter. But in Wales, we can go to the ombudsman. The problem with that is the time it takes, and I think we'll discuss that possibly in part 2. That the incidents arise, the investigation takes place, and the circumstances have by and large changed. The issues, the individuals concerned may have resigned, and even worse. So I wondered what his attitude to that suggestion of interim suspension was. It seems to be a very necessary tool in our armour.
It was raised.
It was, yeah. Can I? I'll deal with that because I actually raised it, and I said I was very concerned.
Right.
I thought the members of the public would be very concerned about it. I think my suggestion was that if anybody faced a term of imprisonment of, let's say, 3 years or 5 years on conviction, then they ought to be suspended. If it was lesser than that, perhaps not. But if there was a regulation there, the person would either be suspended or not. It wouldn't be up to the council. And I think we've got a situation, as you know, in the Vale, and I think members of the public would think, well, this isn't very satisfactory. Although we all know that people are innocent until proved guilty. He did raise the question of remuneration, and I said I didn't think any of us independent members were doing it for the money, although it was quite nice to have some, to get some money. And I said it's the typical thing that if they want younger people, you know, I don't know, I think we're probably all retired and we've got the time to do it. If they want younger people to do it, they're probably going to have to pay a realistic wage for people to take time off work and be properly compensated. But that was the issue. He did raise that. Mrs. Hallett, did you want to comment?
I just wanted to make a comment in respect of the Act. There was some very good supportive information on the website regarding that, particularly in respect of the TCCs. Mr. Cuddy, I don't know whether you actually seen it, but it was very informative. I must admit to not knowing an awful lot about town and county councils, but this information was invaluable. So if my colleagues haven't looked at it, it's worth a look at.
Right, thank you. Your hand is up still, Councillor Cuddy.
No, I raised it. I raised it again in relation to your points. I think my point was slightly different. Wasn't the seriousness of the alleged offence. It was the sort of the nugatory nature of our sanctions. If as the years passed by, that was my point. Often, the people have resigned and gone somewhere else by the time we get around to making an adjudication.
Okay, so subject to anybody else. Now we'll move on to 8, correspondence with the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales.
Yes, Chair. The proposal, I think, here is that we deal with this under part 2. So if we move to the urgent item, which I think is on the agenda.
Yes, there is an urgent item, but again, I think that's more appropriate to be dealt with under part 2. So does everybody agree?
Sorry, Chair, if I could just mention the part 1 report relating to the urgent item relates obviously to it's a report. It's Debbie's report as Monitoring Officer, Head of Legal and Democratic Services. It is to be covered under the linked part 2 report, but it relates to a complaint against a councillor in respect of a community council, and it's been brought here today to the Standards Committee to consider, because the Ombudsman has completed his investigation under Section 69 of the Act. So we're going to consider that. It was just to make that clear for the benefit of the minutes.
Thank you very much. So, does everybody agree now then that we move to part 2? Before we do so, Karen, do you want to tidy things up?
Yes, please, Chair. Just to say at this point, for the members of the public who may be viewing, is in relation to the discussions today. Obviously, we haven't had a complete vote on everything because everybody's in agreement. So I just wanted to make sure that the public knew that we wouldn't necessarily be voting on everything. You've all shown your consensus of agreement on screen. If you hadn't, you would have obviously raised your hand and told us otherwise. So the reports there would either be noted, and any recommendations that you have made and suggested, Chair, would obviously be placed in the minutes. If I could just ask my colleague now, who's on the call, to confirm that we have moved to part 2, as you've mentioned, and that she will then stop the live streaming. And I will stop the recording.